We are fortunate to be here today with Brenda Roberts, distinguished opera singer, Northwestern alumna. Brenda, thank you for being here.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And if you don't mind, let's start at the beginning and talking about your early life, family life, where you're from.
Okay. First of all, I do want to say that I'm very honored that Northwestern University is archiving my life and my career, and that you, Mr. Kevin Leonard, historian, is leading me into this. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a privilege to hold your career records and personal papers here.
Okay, well, I have sung at almost all the international opera houses of the world. Main roles, title roles. Would you like me to say some of them?
But can we start?
You want to start at the
start
beginning?
At the beginning. How did you develop? What was your early life like? How did you develop an interest in music? What was your training like?
I felt always from the very beginning a calling to be an opera singer, not just by coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences, but when I was 8 years old, my third grade teacher said, would you everybody stand up and say what they wanted to be when they grew up? And I stood up and said, I want to be an opera singer. Nobody knew what that was in Lowell, Indiana. And some of them sort of giggled. But I don't even know why I said that. I had never seen an opera. I really didn't know what opera was. My parents never went to the opera. The first opera they saw was when I sang at Saarbrücken, Germany, beginning my career. So that has always been a mystery to me. And I did want to sing. I was taking piano lessons, and I told my mother I wanted to have voice lessons. And she called the well-known teacher in our area, Mrs. Marjorie Farmer, who was the wife of Dr. Chester Farmer. He was a professor here at Northwestern University in the medical department. Worked on I believe, penicillin and how to make this available to people in a very better form. At any rate, so she said no. She said, I'm only 10 years old. My vocal cords are not developed enough to take voice lessons. And my church choir director called her up and said, Brenda is going to sing no matter what. So don't you think she ought to know how not to hurt her voice? So then Mrs. Farmer took me. And she taught me some of the very beginnings of the same technique that Professor Baer taught me at Northwestern when I studied with him. So it was a wonderful experience. I had heard later on, after a few years, about the National High School Institute at Northwestern. And I wanted to go to Northwestern because Dr. Farmer had been there, my uncle had been here. My son, Mark Victor, will be going here. I wanted to look at Northwestern University, and in those days, that National High School Institute was a wonderful organization. I don't know why Northwestern dropped it. They shouldn't have, because the people that went there, we young people, we love being able to study and make our decision about the opera, about not only opera, but music, where we wanted to study. It wasn't only music, by the way. And so I came to that, and I had decided I wanted to go to Northwestern as a student. And thankfully, I was accepted at Northwestern and started my musical studies. Professor Hamano Spear was here on the faculty, and he was the teacher that I had wished to study with. I liked what I heard from his other students, and I banged on his door for a while before he said he had an opening for me. And he gave me a technique that made my voice huge. when I sang in Lutkin Hall, once the plaster fell off of the roof and the people had to jump up and leave. And also in the opera workshop, the plaster fell off. Professor Bear increased the size of my voice immensely, and without losing the beauty of the voice, with his principles of teaching, his techniques. So I'm always thankful to him and what he gave to me. I also studied opera workshop with Professor Robert Gay, and he taught us the acting principles of Stanislavski and also Lee Strasberg's Actors Studio in those days in New York. And it taught me to go into myself and bring out, well, what I figured, what I thought was the truth in what I was doing, so that the roles that I took, which were mostly outsider roles, which fitted my personality quite a bit, it gave me the opportunity to feel inside me and give this to the audience. Just as a footnote, I was always acclaimed, I can read you some of the critics later on, as a dramatic soprano, beauty of tone and size of tone. There were people at the Metropolitan Opera where I sang who said they'd never heard such a large voice. It was Professor Bear. And also they say they couldn't take my eyes off me when I was performing, and that was Robert Gay, who taught me how to act from the inside and not superficial. So anyway,
So with regard to the volume of your voice
yes.
that you learn in large measure from Professor Bear, what are the elements of the technique that allowed you to be so powerful?
Okay, I was going to go into that too. The technique that Professor Bear gave to me, he had listened to Gillesprat in Sweden, and it was that technique, and also from the Italian Lamperti. It's a feeling of a very strong body, counter pressure, he called it, in this direction, being strong, and in your back, which was essential to this technique, so that you had, the technique of the front and the back pulls down automatically the larynx without you pushing it down. A lot of singers, they try to push down their larynx, and that doesn't work. So, and then incorporating on that a lightness of tone, not to get heavy, because that ruins the voice. And it was these techniques that Professor Bear taught in his studio at Northwestern. I never could quite understand why there weren't more opera singers on international stages that studied with him. But I do remember, and this is a great thing of Northwestern University that I was here, I do remember him saying that I must use this technique, be light, and never have any tension in my throat. And it was this relaxation that I could have in my throat because of my strong body that saved me. At my age, I still sing, but I don't sing opera anymore, but I do a lot of concert work. I was at the Carnegie Hall in just about, I think, 12 years ago. And I sing a lot of church and sacred music still. And I'm able to sing. And it's just amazing. So that was the great gift that I got.
Not only did you get volume during your performance, but you had longevity in your career from this.
Exactly, because I didn't have to force my voice. My body controlled it, And I didn't have to use my throat at all, my throat or my larynx or anything. It was very easy. So I think that was the most amazing thing that I have gotten in my life. As you know, I've sung at many, many international theaters, mostly in Wagner and Richard Strauss, the very heavy roles. Which brings me to my first audition. I have to tell this. If the students ever listen to this recording, they have to know this. I had, in those days, I don't know if they still have it, a Eurail pass. And I had bought that, and I could travel around, I think, for 2 weeks or 3 weeks on this pass. Didn't have to pay anything else. And it was the agents. I went to agents and was auditioned. They liked my voice, and they set me up with some auditions at theaters. And they said, I was just out of college for a Wagner soprano or a Richard Strauss soprano. That was very young. And, of course, thanks to Mr. Bear. So I was not having success at the theaters because I would sing Fior di Ligi or the Musetta, my first role, which was at Northwestern University. We'll go into that, too. And they said, you're too young. Don't sing anything heavy. I wanted to sing Salome, the final scene of Salome. That's what I sang here for my final concert. I think it was in my master's. And it was easy. It's huge. It's big. And it's very difficult. Wagner and Strauss are the most difficult roles for any soprano. Anyway, so they said, no, you can't do that. They'll think we're crazy sending you there if you do Salome. Well, I didn't have any more time on my Eurail pass. And I didn't have hardly any money left. I had my flight home, but I went to this theater, Saarbrücken, and I stayed at a very, very cheap pension, hotel. And in the morning you had free rolls and coffee as a breakfast, a continental, they called it. And and then I went over to the theater. And it was getting to be about 12 o'clock, I believe. And I was set up to sing. So I said to myself, students and maybe singers, I said to myself, if I don't sing the selection that is best for my voice, that I know I can do, if I don't sing that, and this is my last audition, I'd go back to the States and always regret it. So I said, I want to sing the final scene of Salome. And they went, ooh. And I said, yeah, oh, you can sing something else. And I said, no, I can't. That's the only thing I can sing. So they said, well, we have to get the good pianist to come up and play the audition. And he came up, and I sang the Salome. And, after about, I don't know, so many minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the most, they said, thank you, from below. See, they sit out there and they listen to you in the public. I'm always on the main stage. And I thought, oh, that's not good. When they say thank you, that usually is not a good thing. Anyway, they said, remain on stage, which I did. They came up and they said, we want to offer you a contract. And I was just so excited. I said, oh, that's wonderful. Well, they took me to the artistic director's office, and they wrote out a contract for me, which was not very much money in those days. I think only It came to about $150 for a whole month. But who cares? If you get an engagement and you can sing on stage, that was wonderful. So we worked out the money and finances and all of that. And they said, okay, go for lunch and come back and pick up your contract. Well, I didn't have any money to go to lunch. So I walked around the city for an hour until they had my contract ready. And as I said, it was not very much money, but that was not the important thing. The important thing was to begin my career. So anyway, I couldn't tell them I didn't have any money for lunch, but I picked up my contract. And I had it, and then I came home and went back there when the season began. So what I want to say to any young singers that are going to try out for auditions, no matter where, I suppose it could even be for other roles, not opera, but operetta or anything like that. Be true to yourself. Do what you think is best, always. And don't be coerced into doing something else that you don't want to do or you don't think will bring success. Be true to yourself. Do what you think is right, and you'll never regret it. So anyway, that was my first audition, telling them I wasn't going to sing anything but Salome. So,
Well, the story you just told parallels what you said you learned from Robert Gay.
yes,
In the way you act, to bring it out of yourself, to be true to the character, the emotion at the time.
yes, truth is the most important thing at all. I suppose in all of life, truth, but it's important in music. I in my role as a Salome or Electra, I sang the title role in the Electra here in the Lyric Opera Chicago. Well, even singing at the Metropolitan in that huge opera, if something was written piano, I would sing it piano. And I always noticed with disdain that many dramatic sopranos would go out and sing as loud as they could from the beginning to the end, and I never did that. I was praised for being able to sing piano. My piano tones at the Met, they just sailed across the theater. If you have the right resonance in your piano, and it's free, supported but not forced, it will come over the orchestra. And I found, for example, as a Salome, which is she asked for the head of John the Baptist on a silver plate. For the people, you have to look it up if you don't know it. She comes out as I believe, a very naive young girl. She dances for Herod, in order to receive the head of John the Baptist. But she starts out as I believe, a young girl, because Strauss wrote many piano passages in the very beginning. And then when she meets up with John the Baptist, she gets filled with passion and wants him, and he refuses, of course. It's John the Baptist refuses her, and she goes wild and crazy and full of vengeance. And Strauss wrote that so that it became much more dramatic and much more active and sometimes rather hateful, and until the very end, when she receives the head of John the Baptist. And it's a huge, huge scene. And she kisses his mouth with a cut-off head on the platter, and just shows that she has completely turned in her personality, from a very naive young girl into a horrible, horrible person. In the end, Herod says, töte dieses Weib, which means kill this woman. And then they kill Salome at the end of the opera. I don't know if that's quite biblical or not, but Salome is in the Bible. So, yeah, the truth. The truth is musical. You can find the truth in the notes written by the composers. You can find the truth in your acting. What am I, as a performer, trying to say? And not only, subtext. That's what Professor Robert Gay used to teach in his opera workshop. The subtext. You have even the text and things that are going on, but there are your thoughts underneath that activity, which you're also thinking. And if you can bring out these subtexts, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Even though you're saying something else in the opera, that is looking for the truth. So I have been also a professor of voice at the Peter Cornelius Conservatorium in Mainz, Germany. I was there for about 11 years. And that's what I try to teach my students too, these principles. And, of course, the vocal technique. Okay, so where are we? I went to, yeah?
Well, you've performed on the biggest stages in your profession.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of those.
Okay. Let me start with Nuremberg, because I got this wonderful engagement at Nuremberg doing dramatic soprano roles, and the role that I did that brought me huge success was the dyer's wife in A Woman Without a Shadow, so Färberin and Frauenschatten, which is also the role that I sang at the Metropolitan Opera. We'll go back to that in just a second. Interesting at Nuremberg was that the mezzo-soprano role was being sung by a very famous singer by the name of Astrid Varnay. Anybody who's listened to this, who knows anything about opera, knows how famous she was. She was at the end of her career, but she could still sing. And she was a wonderful person, too. I was just, a young thing. And she came and she said, Brenda, call me by my first name, by Astrid, and we'll say du to each other. Well, du is the personal form of you in German. So she was very, very nice to me. And at the premiere, she was backstage. I was backstage. We were waiting for our entrances. And she was acting very nervous. And I said, Astrid, you're such a famous singer. Why are you nervous? And she said to me, Brenda, you are very young. If you don't have a huge success tonight, they'll just say you're young. But if I don't have a success tonight, they'll say, I'm over. I'm done. I'm finished. So anyway, we both went out there and we sang up a storm, and they loved us, and they loved it. And the interesting thing about the Nuremberg engagement was that it brought the attention of Wolfgang Wagner, of course, the grandson of Richard Wagner, the great composer, who had the Bayreuth Wagner Festival in his hand. He ran the Wagner Festival by himself almost. And it was brought to his attention that there was a young singer over there in Nuremberg. So he had me, wanted to engage me as Brunhilde, which is one of the biggest, huge roles, of course, in German literature. And he asked me if I would sing the entire role on the Nuremberg stage just for him. So I had to sing every note of that. And when he was finished, he talked to me, and here we go again. He said to me, "You know, you are so young." Anybody in their 20s, you see, as a Wagnerian soprano is really, really young, or even Strauss. Anyway, so he said, as far as your voice and your musicality, he said, that's wonderful, but I'm worried about you because you're so young, if you can really take that stress. And of course, big mouth me, I said, "Oh yeah, I'm all right. I can take it." Well, you see, and so anyway, he engaged me for the following summer as Brunhilde, the Siegfried Brunhilde. There are three Brunhildes in the Ring, Wagner's Ring, the Walküre, the Siegfried, and the Götterdämmerung. And he wanted me to sing. He had one different sopranos that summer, and he wanted me to sing Siegfried because it was the young Brunhilde looking optimistic in the future. And so he engaged me, and I worked with him. He was a stage director also for this Ring cycle. And I learned a lot from him. He just knew everything about the dramaturgy. I don't know what that is in English. Behind the meaning of everything that goes on in the opera, and the singers, and of course it was based on Wolfram von Eschenbach's masterpiece of, I don't know, I think it was written in 1200 or something like that. A legend, a very important legend in the started, of course, in England. Something like the legend of I can't remember, so I'm going to stop. And anyway, so there I was, a young singer at Bayreuth, optimistic, looking into the future, and found myself as a young singer thrown in to a society of opera singers who were really well known. In those days, record companies were the big thing. If singers, we didn't have YouTube in those days and all that. So they had a clique, and the soprano, I won't put any names on there, but the soprano, who was very well known and making a lot of money, did not want a young singer to come and take her success away from her. So I had a lot of trouble with these people, mobbing, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I knew it was there, and I knew years later how bad it had been. But I always tried to sing my best and to give my best performances. And I worked hard. I'll tell you what I think a young singer needs for her attributes to make a success later on. Anyway, so I worked hard, was very disciplined, and I had the good fortune, whether or not they liked me or not, to go on. I sang, of course, at the Metropolitan. We'll come to that. Chicago Lyric, La Scala Milan. I sang Ortrud in Lohengrin with Claudio Abbado, which is a very famous conductor. Sang in Russia. Sang in Chile. I did Salome down there in Santiago, Chile, all over the world. So it didn't harm me. And I think the only reason was, and I think this is important for young singers, never to get disappointed or never to get can I say, down in the dumps. You have to have strength in yourself, and you have to work hard and be disciplined so that no note could be wrong. You have to go out on the stage hoping that not one note is going to be wrong, and have that feeling and that confidence. And as I had said in the beginning, I always felt a calling to do this work. And I personally feel that God, however you see God, whatever religion, is important in your life to give you that strength. And I've always tried to keep that. So that was Bayreuth. And let's see. We could talk about the Metropolitan Opera. How's that? I was engaged at the Metropolitan Opera. Birgit Nielsen had her performances, but I was not a stand-in. I was given my own performances. And I worked with Erich Leinsdorf, a great composer, great conductor. And he liked me very much, and we got along very well. But he was difficult. And Birgit Nielsen kept asking for her tempi to be faster, faster, faster. And we got to the orchestra rehearsal, and Maestro Leinsdorf said to the orchestra, "Now we're going to take the correct tempi." And I thought, oh my gosh, that's very nice of him to say that. And he introduced me. And I do remember another anecdote. I do like to sing slowly. And he said to me, he stopped the orchestra, he said, "Brenda, you've been in Germany too long. You have retardandoditis," which was supposed to be like you have, I don't know, appendicitis or and he said, you must go a little faster now. Keep up with my tempo. And I said, all right. Then he also requested from me that I do some of the phrases in one breath, where every other singer goes out on stage and they do da-da-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, and breathe so that they get their high notes long and really good. And he would not let me do that. I had to sing it da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I thought, gee whiz, I don't get to sing but I had a lot of high notes anyway. So he had his requests, and we got along very, very well. He worked with me personally, too. It was wonderful, a wonderful experience. It was a great success. I have some reviews there, too, which maybe... Oh, if you go to my website, www.brenda-roberts.com. I've got all this information up there, too, with a lot of audio and video recordings. So anyway, yes, it was a huge success, and that's where someone told me later he had never heard such a large voice in his life. So I figured, well, thank you, Mr. Bear. Okay, I came to. I was also sang at the Chicago Lyric. I sang the title role in Electra in a entire production. And the conductor, Berislav Klobuchar, was wonderful. I had sung with him in Sweden at Stockholm. We worked together on the Woman Without a Shadow that I sang at the Met. And he came there, and they were saying, well, is she good? And he said, she has as good of a voice as Birgit Nielsen. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to faint. Birgit Nielsen was one of the very famous and excellent dramatic sopranos of our time. I got to know her too. She was very nice. And also, very interesting maybe for people listening in, I I stayed with Barbara Rockefeller. Now, Barbara Rockefeller was from Lowell, Indiana, and she had a gray stone house on the park there. What's that park called? I can't remember. And so she wanted me to stay with her, which I did. She had married a Sears and then married Winthrop Rockefeller. I got to know her son too, Winnie. They've all passed away. And she had me stay there. She was wonderful to me. She even collected my flowers at the Metropolitan when I sang, and she'd bring them into the dressing room. Very, 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 I was very fortunate. All my life I've been really quite fortunate. And she was sort of sad because she'd been divorced and was living all by herself. And every time I was stayed with her for a couple of times with agents and that I had to had talks with. And she always said, "Oh, don't leave, don't leave." And I said, "I have to. I have this life. I have to." But she was sort of sad. Yeah, the Metropolitan was a wonderful experience, and they were all very, very kind to me. Chicago Lyric. Artist Krennic, actually, I think, was the...
Another Northwestern alumna.
Yeah, she was the artistic director there, I believe, yes. I knew her anyway because she used to she would do rehearsals with me on different arias and everything. I sang for the Sutcliffe production that they did on television in those days. I believe it was in WGN. And I've got a recording of that, by the way, somewhere. You may have it in the files. So, yeah, that was all very interesting. Went on and I sang at San Francisco, Georgette and Il Tabarro. That was a very, very wonderful American experience. Now I wonder what else. This is sort of interesting. I sang in Germany very often, Dresden, and the Staatsoper, the State Opera in Berlin, and I'd have to go across Checkpoint Charlie because of the wall, and that was always an experience. But they were always very good to me at Checkpoint Charlie because they loved opera, I guess. They loved their opera houses, and they would get me through fast. I sang at Dresden many times before the wall fell and also after the wall fell. And one of the times was 11 days before November. Let me look real quick. November. I may not find it that fast. Okay, 11 days before the wall fell in Berlin and dividing East Germany with West Germany, I sang in Dresden. I sang Venus in Tannhäuser. 11 days before the wall fell. And they asked everybody to stand up on stage after the opera because they wanted to read a document called the Freedom of Germany. And they asked me as an American, will you stand up with us too? And I said, oh, sure. So we stood up there on stage and they read the Articles of Freedom for East Germany, that Germany would be united. And it was a very historical thing. I was very honored to stand up with them. And as it turned out, 11 days later, the wall fell. And so Germany was united. It was a wonderful experience. Let's see, what are we missing?
Well, we talked about your young life, but let's talk about your family, because not only
Oh,
are you a musician, but your son.
oh yeah. Okay. Children. Many opera singer women did not have children because they thought it would affect their careers in a negative way. Well, I didn't feel that way. I wanted to have a child. So I had Mark Victor Roberts. And it was quite difficult. I mean, I had to have au pair girls. I had to have babies. I was alone as mother, alone, unmarried. And it would cost money, babysitters and au pair. And I took Mark. Oh, by the way, what our historian is referring to is Mark attended Northwestern also and got his degree. A musician. He had a lot of pop bands and took them on tour in Germany as well as in the United States, and is a very excellent composer. He's now composing a composition for a string quartet, and he keeps working even though he's married and has 2 children. I have 2 grandchildren, 5 and 7. And yeah, he, as a young child, because I was alone with him, I often took him with me on guest appearances when I went somewhere. I mean, he'd been all over Germany. He had been in Ghent and in Antwerpen and all over. And I took him once, which is sort of funny. He loved, he went with me on many occasions, and one was I sang Kundry. And in Parsifal, which is considered to be the longest opera, 5 hours. And Mark was there, and he sat there. Sometimes he probably went to sleep, but afterwards, when I'd say, "You want to go to the opera with me?" he'd say, "Is it shorter or longer than Parsifal?" And I'd say, "No, it's shorter than Parsifal." Parsifal was his measurement of how long can he stand it to go to Mommy's opera. And it was very funny. And once he went also with a babysitter to hear my Isolde in Tristan, and that was in Mainz. And it was very good, she said. He was listening, a very good 2 acts. Now, the beginning of the 3rd act, Tristan has a very long monologue to sing. And he fell asleep in the public. He was in the public. He fell asleep. And then at the end, before I sing the death, the Liebestod of Isolde, I sing Tristan, Geliebter, real high notes. And Mark woke up, "Oh, Mommy!" And everybody in the audience laughed. I don't know what Richard Wagner thought of that, but it was very, very funny. Yeah, he was a delight.
Do you find similarities between your performances and the type of music that Mark is composing or performing?
He's in a different genre than I am, but he knows all about classical music, and he knows everything about opera, probably more than I do sometimes. And he has always supported me and loved my singing, not only because I'm Mommy, but he loves it and he appreciates it. His musicality, he started out at Northwestern in the music department. He was a guitarist, composer. And as a high school student in Germany, that was his major work, was in music in the high school. And he came then to Northwestern from Germany. He was born in Hamburg. So he knows all about that kind of music and came to Northwestern, was going to study music. And I don't know if I should say it. He thought he knew more than your professors here. So he was not always easy to handle. Anyway, he went into the philosophy department and got a Bachelor's of Art degree here. I must admit, and he became sort of like a teacher's assistant. They used him to take some of the classes that students, outside of the main class of the professor. And he knew a lot about philosophy. He had studied that also at the high school in Germany. And he was, I have to boast, he was also almost every quarter on the dean's list for his success in the department. Yeah, and graduated here, and had his, you say, if there's any relationship, no, the music that the bands, he had a number of bands that he started up himself, rock, pop, I don't know what they call it. He composed an entirely different kind of music. His music is online too, by the way, as Enright House or We Are Temporary, a number of different names he had for his bands and everything. And his love of music, I'm sure, came from me, his love of music. And the determination to do something with it. He's still working on it. And it's been very difficult for him because he did have to take care of the children in the past few years, mostly because Mary my daughter-in-law, works with a pharmaceutical firm and in New York, and had to leave, not to leave, but to go to work all the time. Anyway, so now he has more time because I've got them in schools. He's got them in schools, and I'm helping him. Even the young one is in a preschool. But I did write up a few notes about... Are we off that subject? Mm-hmm. Oops. Here we go. I have to read this because I wrote it down once. And I wrote it for my own students in Germany. I said I was a professor over there. So I wrote down, what does it take for a singer to develop a career? I hope this is helpful for your students if they ever look at this. Okay, all of the usual one suspects, no doubt: talent, discipline, ambition, hard work, relentless training. I'll tell you an anecdote about that in a minute. A strong desire to succeed, support from family and friends, determination, the love of what you're doing. You gotta love it. A genuine passion for singing, the feeling that you could not do anything else, a calling. And this is just the beginning. You also have to have perseverance, the ability to take and absorb criticism, a talent for acting and expression, both in the body and the voice. Good looks help. And then, when everything else is in place, a great deal of luck. And best if you think there's a power looking over you. I have to tell you one little anecdote about this. A lot of practice. At the Hamburg, I was at the Hamburg State Opera for 9 or 10 years, and sang all Santa, Electra, the Dyer's Wife from Frauenstadt, all kinds of roles here. And I would be in the practice rooms in the afternoons, just to work on my voice and practice, and nobody was there. The singers were all too famous. I guess they didn't think they needed it. As a matter of fact, I know one singer who said he never practiced. It was either going to go or not. But James King, I'm sure, you know that name. A very famous tenor, American. And he sang a lot at Hamburg. And as a matter of fact, I sang with him. I sang with him a Lohengrin performance. And he would be in the practice rooms, about the only one, and me. And I'd be walking down the hall into my practice room and back and forth, and he would be there and would say, hello, and he'd say, hi, Brenda, and I'd say, hi, James. And he said, you're here again? And I said, yeah, are you here again? He practiced. He worked up until the very end. And he kept that beauty of his sound, too, by practicing. But not all professional singers are like that. I think it's important. A lot of women singers, for example, men usually last longer than women, but women singers, they usually give up their careers in their 40s, 45s, or something like that. Some will go on to do more songs, Lieder, and that. And but the big opera, most women don't last that long. And I always felt some of these famous singers just didn't do enough work on their voice. You have to keep up with it your whole life. So, yeah, I've been very fortunate. And I must say, with the help of Northwestern University, I couldn't have done it without all my professors here. Now I'm trying to think. While I was here at Northwestern, by the way, I did do master classes with Lotte Lehmann, who is a very famous singer, sang Wagner too, and a very famous pedagogue. And she did my master classes here at Northwestern, and I was able to sing for her. And she did say, Brenda, you were born to sing opera. I'll never forget that. And my friends who are out there will never forget it either. That was so big for me. Actually, I felt very humbled, because to think I was born to sing opera at that age at Northwestern was something absolutely amazing to me. And yeah, so a lot of good things happened here at Northwestern. I was very thankful for.
Thank you, Brenda. Brenda, you're now talking to the future.
Future.
This recording
Yes.
will be seen long after you and I are gone.
All right.
Anything you want to leave those people with?
With who I am. They know who I am.
Yeah.
Or where I've sung. They know I'm not sure what you're getting at. What would I like to leave them with?
Advice. You've talked about practice. You've talked about what it takes to be a singer. Is there anything else you want to impart to the future?
Well, I'm very thankful for this opportunity, that there is a future, and that it will be available to anybody to listen to. Or I'm actually, what I'm hoping is not to survive time, but also to help people, help young singers mostly, if they listen to it, and to show that Northwestern was always a very important foundation in my life, where I learned most everything that I could use in my life. I still sing. Oh, and the other thing is, which I don't think I've said, I had a major in voice performance here, but I also minored in piano. And I also took piano in my master's classes too. But interesting, maybe it's sort of naive. I sang a recital at my Methodist church in Lowell, Indiana, I think it was 1986. And this recital was supposed to be, I'm in a career, so people knew who I was. And I sang this recital asking for donations for a pipe organ in our church. And we raised, the whole place was full, and we raised enough money to install a pipe organ in our church. And now, just since last October, our organist retired and they hired me to be organist. And so now I'm playing my baby, my pipe organ that I sang for and got established. And I tell you, I do not believe in coincidences. I think things like this are planned in our lives, and sometimes we don't know it until a lot later, like now. And the only thing I had to do was at Northwestern, I was not in the organ department, which we did have in those days. We don't now, and we should, with that beautiful church right over in the corner, chapel. The only thing I didn't know how to do was make my feet work. So I had to learn how to make my pedals work with my fingers, that's funny. But it's wonderful. You just never know what things are going to happen in your life. And
well, Brenda, I'm thankful that you happened in my life. I'm thankful that you're placing your material with Northwestern University Archives, that people can study about you and your career and learn from that. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real honor for me. We've known each other now for a couple of years, Mr. Leonard and I, and he has taken my materials, and I've got a lot more to donate.
Good.
And I am honored that this might outlast my life. Oh, and we do have, because I sent my first opera, was singing Musette in La Boheme, here in Cannes Auditorium with the orchestra. And I do have a couple of pictures of that I gave you. And we also have a tape recording of the performance somewhere.
Yeah, it's with the digital people.
They should do that as soon as possible. The tape is quite old. So, yeah, we will have that here too, available. And a lot of my other performances and CDs, and I have to get the rest of my materials together. It's
excellent.
And I thank you to you people who are doing the recording and the photography. You've been very patient with me. They keep trying to push the hair away from my face.
It wants to do that.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful, a wonderful experience. I hope I was lucid enough that people...
Absolutely.
Okay, the first opera, my experiences were in Vienna, Austria. I guess I skipped that. Between my bachelor's and my master's degree, I spent a year in Vienna because Professor Beer, Hermanus Beer, said if I wanted to go over to Europe for a short time, there was a good teacher over there I could study with. And I went over there, very disappointed in the teacher over there. I had for, I think, 3 or 4 months, the only thing I could do at our voice lessons was I was not singing a tone. I got so depressed and so upset. But the great thing about that experience being at the Akademie für Musik, the Academy for Music, was that we students, for pennies, we didn't have much money anyway, could go to the opera at the Vienna State Opera, where I sang later on a number of times. And any rate, we could go, for pennies, standing room. You had to stand. And so I would be at the opera about 4 times every week. And I know which one. One of the first ones I heard was the Magic Flute. And there was a very famous singer singing that. The name will come to me. The problem is, this singer died right after that, but it was the first opera I heard. A wonderful tenor voice in the Magic Flute, Zauberflöte in Vienna. And the thing was also, I could hear Birgit Nielsen in those days, and a young singer by the name of Anya Celia, who I thought was very interesting because she was very dramatic on stage, and I liked that kind of acting. I tried, and I saw amazing things there, all kinds of Wagner and Strauss, and I think I even saw an operetta there 4 times a week. I'd be there.
So this was after your bachelor's.
After the bachelor, before I did my master's.
So you were studying music before you ever saw an opera?
Yep. Before I even sang one.
Yeah.
That was in my master's. Well, of course, I had records.
Of course. Right, you've heard
Yeah.
it, but never saw
Yeah.
one on stage. Well, thank you for sharing.
I'm
that.
trying to think if I even went to the Chicago Lyric. That was quite a trip for me as a student.
And more expensive.
More expensive.
Well, thank you for sharing that anecdote.
Yes, you're very much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're
Right.
welcome. Yeah.